there was someone who worked for me years ago, another therapist, and she was like, it's kind of like if you're climbing a mountain and you have a rope, you got to like tug on the rope and see if it's secure. It's like you got to test stuff, and not in a game
Sorry,
way.
I was going to say I went into my whole other direction.
Did you do rock climbing? Okay.
Sure. That's what they call it these days.
Oh, you're going the shibari direction. Okay, I'm with you.
You said tug, Heather.
Episode.
You said tug. Not me. I'm just listening.
Hello, my loves. We are back this week with a very special guest, somebody that I met at PodFest Orlando recently. So help me welcome Damona Hoffman. Damona is a certified dating coach and a regular cast member of The Drew Barrymore Show and a frequent contributor to NPR, The Washington Post, The LA Times, and Access Hollywood. Her podcast, Dates and Mates, was named Podcast of the Year at the Black Podcasting Awards in 2022. And her first book, F the Fairy Tale, was recently released January 2nd. Check it out if you're watching on video, 2024, and hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list. So welcome, Damona. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, I can finally say I'm a best-selling author. I mean, I'm like Amazon parenthetical.
No, it still counts.
But that's a big deal. I mean, that's where most people buy their 100%. Books now,
yeah.
No big deal.
It is weird. And we were just talking about how like you're just kind of like focusing on what you can do and the step ahead of you and keeping your nose down. But it is good to just like celebrate sometimes,
That's right. I really believe in that. Celebrating the small moments. We just had Valentine's Day, which is always the biggest day of the year in the dating coaching business. And we make such a big deal about that. But it's like, what about all the other days?
Yeah.
We're still here.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm terrible at like the holidays in my industry. Like there's so many different days and I just feel like, oh my God, I need like a whole calendar and I'm just not that organized. But yeah, I'm like relationships and intimacy matter every day. So let's just do it every day. But I started looking at your book and I was like, oh, this is a good book. This is different. And I love the title, F the Fairy Tale. How did you come up with the concept and the title for this?
Well, the concept preceded the title.
Okay.
Originally, I was really seeing a lot of people being attached to old narratives in my practice. People would come in with these lists a mile long that didn't actually connect to anything that they told me they wanted in their life. And they were being consumed by the rules and the game.
Oh my God.
And chasing chemistry and asking for their soulmate. And I was like, man, all of these things are myths. These are dating myths that maybe were true at one point, but now have kind of evolved just into stories that we continue to tell ourselves and tell other people. And I wanted to give people, first of all, a wake-up call, and second of all, a roadmap to be able to move out of that space and into the reality of designing our own love lives and relationship futures. So originally, it was really focused on the myths, but I felt like I needed a title that captured the overall zeitgeist of dating today. That like, what are people writing into my podcast, into Dates and Mates, saying they are feeling? And they're saying F dating, really. But
all the time. Yes.
Yeah. What they're really saying is F the fairy tale. What they really need to be saying is F the fairy tale. That old story does not apply to me necessarily. And I look at it as really empowering. It's really the subtitle of the book that resonates most for me.
At that.
Rewrite the dating myths and live your own love story. It's that empowerment piece that I really want people to take away from reading it.
I love that. And I mean, I think part of me, so like I'm a romantic, right? Like I love love. I love helping people save the relationships and turn things around. And I love hearing how people met and how they fell in love and all that good stuff. But like, does the romance get lost at all? Like if we're saying F the fairy tale, is the romance still there? And like, how do we even conceptualize romance if it's not the fairy tale?
Yeah, see, that's the thing, Heather. I'm not really a romantic.
Oh my god, that's so interesting.
I'm a realist. And I
Okay.
I think you can have, the magic and the discovery, and I say this as someone who has been happily married for 16 years, almost 17.
That's pretty good.
Um, it's pretty good. And in Hollywood years, it's
Like,
75.
amazing. Unheard of.
Right. But it doesn't look the same way that the fairy tales looked. It doesn't look the
Mhm.
way that the rom-coms told me it would look. And actually the
Mhm.
rom-coms had me as a total love cynic. I was like, "Well, that's not gonna
Mm.
happen." So it was actually really empowering for me to say, "Oh, I can actually seek out a partner who's a feminist and who's a
Mm.
50-50 caretaker for our
Mhm.
children
Mhm.
and, who is is my idea of Prince Charming, not
Yeah.
what's in the books, you know?
Okay.
So
Okay.
I just I I I hear what you're saying about not not being romantic, but I think
Mhm.
we put a lot of pressure and weight on the romance. And a
I
lot of
agree with
times we
you.
don't do enough to create the scenario ourselves.
Okay. This is very good. I think this is gonna be so important for people listening, including myself.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah,
Asking for a
asking for
sex therapist.
just for my listeners, I swear. So how do we embrace the realism? Like, what does that look like? How do we go from like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be my soulmate. I'm so excited. It's gonna be so romantic," to like, just like a realistic, healthy, happy relationship?
Well, we stay in the moment, first of all,
Okay.
because a lot of the anxiety that we feel in relationships comes from either ruminating on the past or
Oh, yeah.
projecting to the future.
100%.
And we're not here enough. We're not in this moment enough. And really engaging with the person in front of us
Mhm.
and listening and also taking responsibility for co-creating this experience. Because I hear a lot in dating today of like, oh, this person did this to me. There's so much ghosting. Dating apps are,
Yes.
the problem. There's a
Yep.
lot of deflection of the responsibility, which I
So much.
understand. I understand we don't want to sit in that icky place.
Mhm.
But that icky place is only icky because we're that's how we're reading it as icky. And
Yeah.
if we use it, it can actually be a place of transformation. And I say a lot in the book that relationships are a mirror and
Mhm.
dating is a set of learned skills. Like if we can flip to our relationships being the space where we can learn the most about ourselves,
Mhm.
it's takes on a whole new sense of of wonder and discovery and magic, because that is
I
an
love
endless
that.
well. It's not an end point. It's
No.
constant
And I
discovery.
agree. I think that is where we learn the most about ourselves is our relationships because yeah, you're forced to be like, "Oh, I'm the common denominator." Or like,
True.
"Oh, my story I'm projecting my story about how my partner should be onto them and that's not working." Um yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you wrote in the book that I wanted to ask about specifically was like making the list, right? Because I feel like so many advisors or dating coaches out there are kind of like, well, you need to, manifest and you need to like get super clear and like super specific. And I've had people tell me like, I made a list one time and it had like 80 things. And then I met my partner and they had like all 80 plus some or like, I know. And you're just like, oh, okay, that's like what I'm supposed to do. And then I'm witnessing some of my friends who are dating and it just seems like they have so many deal breakers. So what's your approach or advice to that situation?
Well, I want to clarify that
Mhm.
don't I do believe in manifestation,
Okay,
and
cool.
it's not that I'm saying don't have a list. It's
Okay.
that I'm asking people to look at what's on the list and ask
Okay.
them how that adds up to their overall vision board of life, right? Because people will come in and tell me, I want to be the CEO of my company, and I want to have 4 kids, and I want to have a big house and a white picket fence, and and whatever's been sort of spoon fed to them.
Right.
And therefore, especially with high achieving women, I'll hear, and I need him to be at my income level or higher.
Oh my God.
Super
Yes.
ambitious.
Yes.
Also be a co-parent. And I'm like, who's doing all of the things? Because
Right.
I mean, I live that life right now. I have 2 kids. I have a husband. I have a business I run, and it's hard. I need all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So if I was focused on having somebody that was also super ambitious and also and like maybe couldn't tolerate the fact that I travel a lot for work or I need help with the kids. Like I knew for me a traditional relationship was just never going to work.
Right.
So I want folks to really examine their list and say, what if I just carried over? Like why is height on this list? What does
Thank
that even
you.
mean?
I have the biggest issue with the height criteria that women have. It makes no sense, and it does not predict how good of a partner someone's going to be at all. In fact, shorter men make better partners.
I love a short
research.
king.
Right?
Granted, I'm very petite, and I have been criticized / attacked by many taller women. They're like, "Why are you taking the tall ones?" I'm like, "'Cause I'm not looking at the height. I'm not. Does not even factor into my calculus."
Right.
But
Right.
it is a part of. I did a video on Instagram about dating math, and because I hear that a lot, and you're exactly right. It doesn't add up to what kind of partner this person is, but it does make sense in that it is a relic of a time in the past. And like we're evolving like pretty slowly.
Okay.
Technology is evolving much quicker than
dating.
than our biology. Right?
Oh, that makes sense.
So there's this dissonance that comes up when when certain factors in our external environment have changed, but we have not adapted yet. So we're still thinking tall means provider, means good. And then it gets reinforced by all of these stories that we read and rom-coms that we
It
see.
really
Meanwhile,
does.
everyone in Hollywood is like 5'8". Okay.
That's interesting.
That's all perspective. It just kind of reminds you it's all perspective. So I'm just asking folks to really look at this list and say, how does this list line up with the life that you're building? And what really, as you said, Heather, what really translates into the kind of partner that you need in your life? And what is really important to you? And I also get people to drill down into how they want to feel in the
Oh, I love
relationship.
that. That's like one of my favorite questions.
Yeah, because we can quote manifest and put on a vision board. I want it to look like this.
Sure.
But if you haven't stopped to think about what's it going to feel like, then you're not going to recognize it because it may come in different packaging than you're used to, than you're expecting. And you're focused on that image on the vision board and you're missing the whole picture.
Yeah.
So
it's like, how do we get out of our own way with that?
Well, by really focusing in on what's important. So I give my clients, and I've mentioned this in F the Fairy Tale, I give everyone 3 must-haves and 1 deal breaker.
Oh my God, that's so little.
I know, because it leaves room for discovery. It leaves room for the person to be a whole person. That's the other thing that I think we sometimes forget. We're like checking boxes, fitting puzzle pieces in, and then a person has autonomy and free will and does something that doesn't fit into the story, and we're like, how dare they? Who is this person? It's like they're a complete whole individual with their own vision board and manifestation instead of lists and rules and deal breakers and all that.
Right.
So as you said with your friends, we can always find a reason to say no. So that's
I
why
know.
I say one deal breaker. Like, what is one thing you just cannot tolerate? Because there were so many things that I had originally on my list. By the way, I don't say this from nothing I write in this book is from like a holier than thou, like,
Mhm.
well, it's
Right. I have it all
I've
figured out.
divinely, yes, I've divinely received this information. No, I went through the crap. I went through the heartbreak and the incorrect decisions and the discovery and the learning
Mhm.
and came out the other side and realized, oh, so it wasn't actually important that my partner does yoga or has perfect teeth or I know you're laughing. These are
I
things
know, but
that
you're like,
at
it's
one
so
point in my
true.
life, I was
It
like, must have.
Right. Right. Or like, I need a super spiritual guy, or I need, yeah, the guy who's 6'2" and has a six pack. And it's like, do you? Do you?
And
Probably
honey,
not.
the six pack, give it 5 years,
Yeah.
2
The
kids,
dad bod is
and
coming.
it's coming. It is inevitable. So
Yeah.
you might as well accept it from the beginning.
Right. Right, it's true. Like, I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, and he talks about, kind of our attachment to, like, the vessel, and he's like, "If you're attached
Mm,
to, like, being super hot and sexy, like, physically and, like, getting your whole identity from that, it's like, life has a few things to teach you." So, um,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And again, if you're building most of my clients are building towards a long-term relationship. So,
Mhm.
I also acknowledge that for short-term relationships and hookups, there's a whole different set of criteria that
Completely.
I don't really address in the book because
Fair.
that is not that is not the goal of the
They're
book.
probably not gonna buy the book anyways.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they should buy it, but
They should.
take it all with a grain of salt because
Yeah.
it's all about designing the relationship that you want. And I do
Mhm.
give permission, not that anyone needs my permission, that short-term relationships are okay. And it's also okay to not be in a season of pursuit of a long-term relationship. I feel like there's a lot of pressure, particularly
Yeah.
on women in their 30s to
Yeah.
be like on this relationship escalator all the time. And it's like
Mhm.
may not be your season and that's okay
Yeah.
too. So when we're looking at long-term relationships, it's 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 important to take in the whole person
Mhm.
and acknowledge that this is what you see in this moment, but
Yeah.
it's for richer, for poorer, for sickness and in health, like there's no guarantees.
I know.
So what's
Yeah.
inside is so much more important because the external can and certainly will change.
Yeah, and I saw you had in the book, like, the 4 pillars, and I was like, "Oh, these are good ones." So can you tell us about the 4 pillars and, like, what they actually mean in practice?
Yeah, and I've been talking about the 4 pillars for a very long time.
Mhm.
It it was very convenient that I realized they actually align well with these 4 dating myths, and so I
Hmm.
really structured in the book the pillars that I've always guided my clients towards as remedies, as antidotes to the myths that
Mhm.
we've been believing. So, rather than pursuing the list, if you can instead focus in on first common goals for the future. Like,
Yeah.
do you want what I want? Are you also looking for a long-term relationship? Are you looking for a
Mhm.
short-term relationship? Do you want kids? Do you not want kids?
Mhm.
Do you want to travel? Like what basic relationship goals? First of all,
Mhm.
aligning there. Then aligning values. How do you look at the world? What do you believe to be true about the world? How do you live your life?
Mhm.
And it sounds so simple, but I
It
find that a lot
does.
of people aren't even really clear on their own values. So then it becomes really complicated to assess when you're sitting across from a person on a date.
Mhm.
Wait, do are we aligned in values? Because I'm not even really sure what I believe.
Yeah.
So we have to get clear on that before or as we are going through the dating process. I don't believe that you need to stop dating and go through, like, there are some coaches that'll be like, you need to, like, go to the mountain, get clarity, and then you can reemerge into the dating
Right.
pool ready. No. I think we learn in relationship. We
Agreed.
learn in relation to other people, we learn in
Yeah.
motion. So, I think you can be doing all this simultaneously, but if it's overwhelming for you, guess what? You get to write your own love story. So,
Right.
you can take a pause as needed. You can
Mhm.
focus on self-care and self-love and whatever that looks like for you.
Mhm.
But then eventually you'll have to build towards connection with another person, whatever that looks like for you. And so communication and I'm really curious on
So
your take
huge.
on that as a sex therapist.
Yeah.
Communication is really important, and I say in the book, instead of chasing chemistry, which is the myth, really chase
Mhm.
curiosity and communication
Ooh.
and connection, because that's
Okay.
ultimately what we want. We don't want chemistry. Like,
My
chemistry's
God, I
fun
was gonna ask
and
you about
cute.
that, and now it's just coming out. That is so fascinating to me because, first of all, you just named 2 of the qualities of self energy. So I'm an IFS therapist, and so we talk about self energy, which is like your higher consciousness, and we talk about parts, which are kind of more protective defense mechanisms. But connection and curiosity are 2 of the 8 C words that are used to define self energy. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, it's interesting, the overlap." Um,
I didn't
yeah,
even know that.
I know you didn't. That's why
S
it's like when everything converges, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
I think whether you come from the dating coach perspective or, Buddhism or, internal family systems parts work, it's like, it's all kind of pointing people, I think, in the same direction, which to
yeah.
me means that it's right.
Right. Well, and we've all come to this place through research and
Right,
case studies, and
right,
we're seeing it in practice. It's
right.
not theoretical. So,
No.
I'm not surprised. I'm surprised, but I'm
Yeah.
not surprised.
Yeah, and the communication piece that you mentioned too, like that's the number one thing people want to work on with sex. A lot of times I'll work with people more in the communication and like emotional mastery before we even get into the sexual stuff, because without the mastery on that level, we're just not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's usually like the first homeworks. And I actually built an emotional intelligence course into my 3-month package because I was like, everyone just needs this. So
Everyone needs it.
yeah.
And it's the thing that's not taught in schools.
No.
And yet it is probably the element of our learning that
Mhm.
is most beneficial in being able to navigate the world.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
especially, men are really done a disservice from the patriarchy actually, with their emotions,
Let's talk
It's kind
about
of
it.
like let's get into it because I see this still in like reality TV. It's like, "Oh, don't cry, bro," or "Don't," and I'm like, "What the fuck? Let him cry."
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah. I
thoughts on
mean,
that?
oh, well, 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, the answer to all questions, I say this to my husband. The answer to all questions is either because the patriarchy or
Yeah.
because racism. Those are the only
Right,
possible
right,
answers. Like,
right. Oh, isn't that
because
fascinating?
I know, which I do talk about a little bit in the book, but we won't even like get,
Okay.
we won't, we
Scratch the
won't get to,
surface.
yeah, we need a lot longer to unpack all
Me
of that.
too.
But it does come down to the core truth of this book, that
Mhm.
we have been fed a steady diet of stories,
Oh, yeah.
and we believe those stories, whether they're
Yeah.
stories about gender roles or they're stories
Yes.
about how we are supposed to communicate.
Mhm.
It's time for us to re-examine all of those stories for ourselves,
Yes.
because no one else, culture, society ain't going to do it for us. It
No.
is personal responsibility at this point,
Yes.
every man and woman for themselves. So
Yes.
that's that's really what I feel like we're being called to do. And as horrible as the pandemic was in so many ways, I
Mhm.
do feel like there was a bit of an awakening.
I agree.
You agree? Yeah.
Mhm.
Of, oh, wait. we get to do this once. I mean, I'm sure there's some people listening who are like,
yeah. How spiritual do you want to get?
And I do dabble in the spiritual. There's not a ton
Yeah.
of it in this book. There's a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
okay, theoretically, we get to do this once.
Mhm.
And we don't know our expiration date. So
Yeah.
why not live now? Why
Yes,
defer
yes,
your
yes.
happiness, right? Why
Yes.
visualize the ending of a story that hasn't even begun? Why not
Yeah.
just start reading the story now, right? Or
Right.
start writing the story now? Um, so the fourth pillar, which we haven't talked about, which I
Yeah.
know impacts your work as well, is
Mhm.
trust. And that's the one that
Mm.
on dates and mates all the time, people are like, how do I know if this person is the one? How they want like the fast forward button
Yeah.
or just like to go into the truth booth and find out if somebody is are you my person? Check yes, check no.
I know.
And it's something that I see really can only be developed through time and
Mhm.
aligning all of the other pillars. It's like, okay, if we have shared goals, shared values, we have clear communication, and then we can build trust, then
Mhm.
I know I have the foundation of something that can last. But,
Yeah.
it's different also, I guess, in building trust in short-term relationships too. I'm curious how you feel like trust impacts your work.
Okay. Yeah,
Here we are.
I think sexual safety is maybe what I'll call it, is like the foundation. So you need to feel comfortable being vulnerable. You need to feel comfortable being naked with somebody. Um, I'm a big fan of having conversations about safety in terms of like, have you been tested? Do you have other partners? Things like that. And like, can this person answer those questions? Do they get weird and fidgety? So part of it, there was someone who worked for me years ago, another therapist, and she was like, it's kind of like if you're climbing a mountain and you have a rope, you got to like tug on the rope and see if it's secure. It's like you got to test stuff and not in a game
Sorry,
way.
I was gonna say I went my whole other direction.
Did you do rock
Yes.
climbing? Okay.
Sure. That's what they
Yeah.
call it these days. No.
Oh, you're going the shibari direction. Okay, I'm with you.
You
That
said
could be a
tug,
whole separate
Heather. You
episode.
said tug. Not me. I'm just listening. In the
Damona's just
moment with
listening,
you.
guys. So yeah, I think you gotta like, tug on the rope metaphorically speaking, and like, is this someone I can trust? Like, does this person show up for me when I need support? Does this person, or are they gaslighting me, when I'm
Mm.
emotional? Like those are things to look for. And what's fascinating to me is like people tolerate a lot of shit. People tolerate a lot of toxicity. And I would like us to stop doing that. Um, yeah.
Why?
I,
Why?
I, okay. Okay. Wow. Wasn't prepared for all the questions, but
You're like, I thought I was asking the
I
questions.
was interviewing you a second ago.
We're just having conversation.
But yeah, I think a lot of it does have to do with like the self energy and the parts. So, the more we're in our self energy, the more we don't abandon ourselves and we show up for ourselves when it's hard. That builds incredible confidence. And I think when we have that and we know that we're okay on our own and we're still a little afraid, we might still be a little nervous, that's okay. But then we just don't need to put up with crap. And I think that applies to sexual relationships, that applies to family and boundaries with family, that applies to friendships. But it's a lot of work, It's like I've had to
Mm,
do that work. It's not easy, you know?
yeah.
But I think you do kind of discover your own inner resilience. And then you're like, either I find someone who enhances my life or I'm single.
I was reflecting on this actually. I don't know why. I was thinking about this week.
Hmm.
And like most of my relationships prior to my husband were pretty short term, like
Yeah.
3, 4 months. And I was like, I don't know, you got to get out.
Yep.
And he was the first one that I really felt aligned on all of these pillars. And just like
Mm,
immediately within the first month, I knew that he was different. I didn't necessarily
yeah.
know he was going to be my husband, but I was like, oh, this story is I haven't read this story before,
Oh,
you know?
interesting.
And I was like, where did I get that conviction before to just be like, I'd really rather be single than
Yeah.
put up with your BS.
Yeah.
Because I see that a lot of my clients are so focused on getting to the relationship
Mhm.
that when they have a bird in hand, they're like, I I'm just gonna anything that doesn't fit into the story, I'm just gonna omit, strike
Oh,
that
yeah.
out,
That's
and like,
powerful.
look, the story still fits.
Uh-huh.
And I was just not willing to do that whatsoever when
Right.
I was single.
Yeah. Same. That's why I've been single a lot.
Well,
Amongst
and
other
it's
reasons, I suppose.
and the benefit though of this time that we're living in, and why I wanted to
Mhm.
write this book right now is like,
Mhm.
look, we look back in history, and I have a little bit of this in F the Fairy Tale. Like, women could not get a loan on a house, could
Yeah.
not take out a mortgage
Yep.
since it's actually the 50th anniversary, I think, this year. Yeah, since 1974. Like,
Oh.
what? Like,
Yeah.
that's not that long ago.
No, it's really not.
When you really
No.
think about just how much choice we had, and then when
Yep.
we factor in the internet just opening up all of our options into getting our
Mhm.
needs met in different ways and
Mhm.
meeting people in different ways,
Yeah.
we just have so much autonomy and choice and freedom that we never had in history before. So
It's true.
why why would you partner if that person is not additive to your life? If they don't
100%.
make the story better, like, it's
Right.
like,
I
I'm
think
just
it's
gonna keep
trauma. I
writing.
mean, I think it's like people have their wounded parts and their protective mechanisms. And some people, I think, because they maybe do abandon themselves, they outsource getting a lot of those needs met that, they could be meeting more internally. And so they feel like, oh my God, well, I just can't handle being alone, or I like don't even know if I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be having like panic attacks. Um, some people don't have like full adulting skills, you know? And so I think they feel like, okay, well, I kind of know this about myself, so I kind of need to be partnered up instead of showing up for myself and developing the adulting skills. So, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, and I do also think we're very starved for connection, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Totally. Yeah.
We really need that connection, and even though in some ways we are more connected than ever, we're also more disconnected than ever.
Yeah, like 100%. And
Mm.
I'm from Chicago, so I really experienced that living in a big city. It's like there's millions of people around you. It's like densely populated. And we all just kind of ignore each other on like the L train and like go back to our little boxes in our apartment buildings and then get on our phones and talk to each other that way or something, or
I
like
know.
scroll on Instagram. And that's how we stay in touch. It's like, this is fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I think we're really just at the beginning of being able to integrate technology into our connection network,
Mhm.
because it 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 has to be additive. It has to be yes and, it can't be either or.
Yeah.
And it kills me when I see like a couple. You see this a lot like in reality TV. You see
Mhm.
a couple that is together, separate. Like together but both on their
Yes.
phones doing totally different things.
Yeah.
And it's like you have connection right here in front of you
Yeah.
and you're turning away,
I
like
know.
the
Have you been watching Love is
Gottman.
Blind?
True. Yes.
Yeah.
Guilty as
Yeah.
charged. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, for
Because it
example, you
immediately
may
took me
see
to
it
a
on
scene.
a reality TV show, for example. Yes. Yes. But it's funny because like in scripted, my husband's a scripted television writer.
Oh, cool.
But you don't see the reality of how people communicate in the scripted shows, right? It's like all
True.
perfect. You don't see people pull out their
That's
phone in
true.
the midst of somebody trying to talk to them, but like
Yeah.
that's how we really talk today. That's how we really communicate. So
It's true.
I acknowledge the system is broken, but I
Mhm.
also want people to feel empowered to fix it. And what I see a lot of
Yeah.
in my practice is this acceptance of like, well, this is how it is. Like ghosting is at an all-time high. I've never seen this level of ghosting happening. I've been
Mhm.
doing this for 17 years.
Okay.
But we've almost come to the point where we're like, well, it's an inevitability. And so I'm just going to accept it. No,
Mhm.
you don't need to just accept it. Like
Okay.
this is not okay behavior. It's not
Right.
okay for people to just be treating everyone like they're completely disposable and not having
Correct.
any responsibility for
Yeah.
showing up when you say you're going to or doing what you say you're going to do.
Right.
So, how are we as humans living on this planet all going to collectively take responsibility for changing the system? Because if we just acquiesce and we're like, well, I guess that's just going to happen. That's just online dating for you.
I know.
It will never get better.
So what do we do?
We hold people to task. Like,
Mhm.
first of all, we hold ourselves to task. I've said
True.
this on Dates and Mates a few times that people will tell me, "Oh, I hate ghosting." And then if I look under the hood, I'll be like, "But what about these people that you said that you matched with and then you didn't respond to?"
Right.
You're kind of
Right.
doing the thing you said that you
Right.
don't like to do to have done to you, and you're doing it. So we just have to
Yes.
take our own personal responsibility. And then,
Mhm.
I have little tips and tricks in the book of ways to like reconfirm and inspire someone to show up for you and
Hmm.
become a real person off of the app. Because if you're just like text,
Yeah.
text, text, go right to the date, you're just a name and a phone, you're not a real person.
I
So,
totally agree on that. Like, I like to leave
yeah.
audio messages on the apps that will let you do that, and I think that
Mhm.
really personalizes it.
I love audio messages.
Yeah.
I I came in real hot when Hinge added audio prompts. I was like, "This is gonna change dating forever." And it hasn't. However,
No.
the people that use it
Mhm.
find it really useful, and I do
Yes.
think I tend to be ahead of the curve.
Not
So
surprising.
so things that I say like, "Well, this is gonna happen,"
Mhm.
um, I'm usually pretty good, but the pandemic totally screwed my timeline. So
Okay.
I think you're on the right track, Heather.
Mhm.
And
Thank you.
audio is it's so informative to be able to hear someone's voice
Mhm.
and hear their cadence, hear what they can talk about authentically to kind
Mhm.
of bring someone off of the screen and into the real world. I'm still a big
Mhm.
fan of phone calls. I think phone calls are gonna come back. They
I
got
think so
replaced by
too.
video calls. I'm still
That's
bullish on
true.
video dating too, but
Okay.
I think that the pandemic, it was too much too soon because we went from
True.
not doing that at all to that was all we were doing to like,
Mhm.
now I'm sick of it. So,
Right.
there's somewhere in between, and that is audio, like
Mhm.
voice memos and also phone calls where you can have real time synchronous communication. But
Yeah.
there's a step between we've matched and we're in the real world. But I've been seeing people ghosting further down the line too than I used to only see it,
Mm.
dates one or two.
Okay.
I'm hearing from people like I was dating this person for 2 months and suddenly they like
Oh my
blocked
god.
me and fell off the face of the earth. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that's because we have all sustained so much uncertainty over the last 4 years.
That makes
Can't
sense.
believe it's been 4 years. Oh my
I know.
god.
It feels like
Uh,
sometimes I, like, forget that I lived through the pandemic, yeah, 'cause it was, like,
and we're
traumatic.
still living through. I mean, like, my daughter has
Yeah.
COVID right
Well, that's
now.
true, yeah.
I'm like, "We still doing this?"
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was over. It's not over.
No.
But again, uncertainty. Like, I had
Mhm.
a whole thing planned for my morning that didn't happen because there's just this constant uncertainty that we have to
Yeah.
endure. And that's not stopping anytime soon. That's the new normal. So,
Yep.
how do we regain certainty in our lives? Because we can't control or predict what other people are going to do.
Right. Right. And I
So
think
we
it's
can
like
stack the deck in our favor and take care of ourselves.
100%. And also, I think learn to deal with uncertainty because we're never going to have 100% certainty
I
really
know
on
it's so
anything.
hard though.
I feel the same way. I have a part that feels the same way. That's kind of like part of me thinks it's very existential too. You know, just like I don't know. I don't want to get super super deep, but I feel like it's happening. Where it's like, death. I think we all have death anxiety. We don't know what's happening. We don't know like kind of why we're on the planet. And I think some of that like real existential stuff is really hard to face. So then we kind of like channel it into like the more concrete things like dating and relationships.
Oh, girl, that was deep.
I couldn't help
I
it. It just
liked it though.
happened.
I liked it. I'm
Thanks.
here for it. Yeah, it's super existential, man.
Mhm.
And when we really think about it, like what is more important on this planet than relationships and the people that are in our
That's my
lives,
thought.
right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it would come up a lot here. But just going back to the beginning of our conversation,
Yeah.
when you were talking about the romance.
Mhm.
Okay, what if I'm going to posit a really big theory.
Let's
What
go.
if we swapped uncertainty and
Mhm.
romance?
Okay, this
Like,
is
what if
fascinating.
those
Tell me
two
more.
words? Because to me, I think a lot of those feelings
Uh-huh.
that when people say romance, they're talking about being swept off their feet. They're talking about the element of surprise. They're talking about things unfolding better than they ever could have imagined. They're talking about stepping into the fantasy. All of that is
Yeah.
uncertainty.
Oh.
So, what if we took back our power
Mhm.
and renamed romance as uncertainty so that in
Wow.
those moments of uncertainty, we're not like panic attack. We're like,
Right.
oh, this is actually the magic. This is
Yeah,
the
this is
magic
very alive.
unfolding.
Yeah. Did you
Because I
just like
love
invent
that.
a whole new theorem of something?
Yeah, it just happened right now in real time. This is what
You
I
all
do.
witnessed it.
This is what I do. But, I get questions all the time from people
Mhm.
that are grappling with this and trying to make sense of this thing that doesn't make sense. Love doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
On paper, we make the lists because we're trying to make it make sense. We're
100%.
following the rules because we need it to make sense and know like
Yeah.
what is the path I'm supposed to follow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense
No.
until it makes sense.
That's so real. I love that because you're right. It's like the illusion of control. And really, I think we kind of have to accept that like we just don't really always have control over it.
You never
Right.
have control over it.
I know.
So, how can we reframe our relationship to uncertainty and find the magic in that
Yes.
instead of the fear in it?
My God. People are going to be like, I thought this was a sex podcast. We just took you on a very spiritual journey, people.
It's all
But it's
related though.
true. It's
It's all
true.
related. And like when you take that into sex, like that also can make sex a lot more thrilling if you embrace the
Ooh,
uncertainty.
yeah.
Because, like, I'm
Yeah.
sure you get tons of questions about, like, I'm so tired of doing it the same way. And, like,
Yeah.
missionary is
Need to
like,
spice it up.
just
Yeah.
need to spice it up. What are we
Yeah.
saying when we want to spice it up? I need a little bit of uncertainty, or I don't
Yes.
quite know how this is going to
Yes.
go.
Yes. Oh my
So
God. This
snatch
is
it
great.
back.
Now we can channel our uncertainty into the areas where it's really fun. This is beautiful.
Yes. Yes. And
I'm into
and
that.
take back our power
Yeah.
of this uncertainty. Mhm.
Okay, I'd love to like digress and go back to something you said earlier about chemistry. I kind of feel like we need to say more about that because I've been kind of exploring this recently myself is like how much do we want our like quote unquote romantic relationship to be like a friendship? Like this is a friend who maybe I like having sex with as well. And how much does it need to be like, oh, there's this like spark and chemistry? And, you use the word curiosity as a replacement for chemistry. And I just thought that was really interesting. I'm like, where are we trying to like make something be in this like other special category?
So I feel like a lot of people are just overly focused on this nebulous idea of chemistry. I've
Hmm.
really seen in my practice and in my life that true chemistry develops over time. You can't just know it off the bat. Sure, you can know if you have a physical response to this person. And going back to our biology we were talking about earlier, like you can be like, that person's cute, and like I feel like I could have sex with them. Like, sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have long-term compatibility with them. And also, if you do not feel that kind of instant spark, that doesn't mean that you can't grow into that spark through deepening a relationship with somebody. So I just feel like it's being front loaded far too much in dating, especially because there's this feeling of like the endless swipe. And it's like, well, I got to have the full package, first date or nothing. Or like, I got to have sex with this person right now to see if we're even going to be compatible in the future. And I'm a big believer in also, I'm a believer in a relationship growth mindset, that you can grow into a deeper relationship with someone, and also like a sexual growth mindset. I think
I like that.
most sexual situations can be improved if both partners are willing to show up for that.
100%. It's my whole job.
Right. But a lot of people aren't doing that, aren't willing to do that exploration anymore. They're just like, oh, it's got to be chemistry, date one or no.
Yeah, like they're looking for the ready-made package, and I like what you said, if you have two people who are willing to show up, and I think that's one of the most important qualities to look for in a partner, is like who's gonna show up and do the work for you with you. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're gonna face challenges.
Yeah, and while I do believe your partner should be your friend as well, I also think we are putting way too much pressure on our partner to be all of the things. So it's like, well, they have to be my best friend. My best friend. Actually, my husband and I had like a little debate about this. I was like, oh, you're not my best friend. I was like,
you're kind of up there, but you're not the number one.
You're like really high on the list, but you're not my best friend, because like I already have a best friend. I don't need that from you.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
like
a different role.
Oh, okay. I thought we were best friends. That's
Oh
fine.
my God, that's so cute though.
Like, but you're better than my best friend because you're my partner. And I also have, by the way, I also have 3 best friends.
Okay.
That I all call, you're my best friend. And never are they like, by the way, 2 of them have the same name, which is funny.
Oh gosh.
But never have they been like, wait, am I your best friend? Or am I your less best friend?
Right. Am I like the third best or the second best or the
they're
first?
all the best. They're all the best. And I don't put the pressure on those relationships to also be my business partner and also my co-parent and whatever. And yet we do that to our romantic partners. And we're like,
I agree.
Hold
it's a
all
problem.
this. Hold my bags. Hold all my bags for me. Right. And it's not fair.
There used to be more community.
Realistic.
And now it's like we depend on one person. It's like funneled into this like little narrow thing of trying to get one person to meet all our needs. And I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's partially community. And I think it's also, as bullish as I am on dating apps, and as much as I believe in the power to use dating apps to expand our dating pool and meet with more like-minded people, I also think it sometimes makes us feel like, oh, well, now that our pool is expanded, I can have one person do all the things.
Right, because I can find the perfect person.
The perfect person. I can order it up. Yeah. And I don't think we need that. Like, and who wants to date themselves anyway? Like, that's not interesting. Like
It's
I
really
said earlier,
not.
Relationships are discovery, right? And I love that my husband and I are extremely different, but I learn from him all the time.
What's your husband like? What made him a different story? That was interesting how you framed it.
It's sort of that unknowable thing where it's like I can't really articulate what made him different, but I can say that everything that was on my list, because I did have a list, I did manifest. I talk about it in the book. I was I started practicing feng shui. My friend was
interesting.
recently certified as a feng shui practitioner.
Really?
She was like, "Can I come and feng shui your house?" I'm like, "Sure."
Cool.
So she had me really get clear on what what I was building, what I was looking for, and to write all those qualities down. And
Okay.
there was nothing about height, there was nothing about income, there was it was
Mhm.
really about what this person would feel like. And I think that's what was different, is that I
Mhm.
recognized all of those qualities were present in him. And I didn't
Mhm.
even realize it until after the fact. I had all of these little pieces of paper in what we call a helpful people box in feng
Okay.
shui. It's what it's really called. It's this little silver box, and
Uh-huh.
you kind of put your wishes in there, and I
Oh,
totally
that's so
forgot about
cute.
it. And I was moving into my own apartment. I'm leaving my roommate for
Uh-huh.
adulting. And I found this box and I was like, "Oh, I totally forgot about this 6 months ago. I put all these little wishes in here." Literally forgot about them. Never
Hmm.
never even thought until that
Mhm.
moment, and I pulled out each little piece of paper and I was like, "Oh, this is actually him.
Oh my
These are
god.
not peripheral qualities. These are like core to who he is." And
Wow.
I realized that manifestation does work.
Yeah.
It's just it's all in clarity. And that's why I'm a big believer in feng shui. I'm not like a don't come to me for consult or anything.
Okay.
I can't help you with that.
You've got a day
Um,
job ready.
but my friend is now very successful as a feng shui
That's so
consultant,
cool.
feng shui from the heart.
Oh, I love
Go
that.
figure. She helps a lot of people with love and relationships through feng shui. But I really
Okay.
think that the core element of it is that clarity. It's
Okay.
not just moving your stuff around, it's getting
Mhm.
clear on what you are manifesting and
Yeah.
then aligning your space, because also like the inputs that we take in, the people that we
Mhm.
spend our time with, the way that our space feels, that can either support or deter us from getting the relationship dream that we want.
Yeah. That makes sense to me, and I mean, I say that to my clients too, and I don't know if they always believe me, but I believe that, like, getting the clarity is more than 50% of the way there,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
And I think some people are like, "Yeah, but nothing's happened yet, like, nothing's even improved." I'm like, "I know, but I'm telling you, like, I've seen this enough in my life and in my clients' lives that, like, when you really know what you want, you get it."
Yeah. Yeah, because you then align your words and your actions and your
Right.
thoughts,
Right.
and it, it's impossible not to get the thing if you are
Right.
really in alignment.
Right. And if you're listening and you're like, no, because I know what I want and I'm not getting it, then you're probably just blocking yourselves in ways you don't realize. And maybe me or Demona could help you.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Subscribe
Uh,
to Ask a Sex Therapist podcast
and
by
the
F
Dates
the
and Mates
Fairy
show.
Tale. And yes, dates and mates. Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, it's like it's a journey. We got to learn how we're blocking ourselves and be kind to ourselves on the journey too, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
That's a big
So
takeaway.
if people are like, oh my gosh, Demona seems so cool and amazing, where do I find her? How could I work with her? How can I just learn more? Where should we send them?
We can send them to the Instagram at Damona
Mm-hmm.
Hoffman. We can
Okay.
send them to the F the Fairy Tale, which is in audiobook, ebook, and hardcover, wherever
Oh,
you get your
nice.
books. And of course, the Dates and Mates podcast. I do new episodes every
Cool.
Tuesday. We are in season 11, season equaling
That's
years.
wild. You guys, before we started recording, Demona said she's been podcasting since 2013. Isn't that amazing?
Yep, you did that math real quick too.
Yeah.
11 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this medium. I love the audio medium, and
Yeah.
that's why I was like so excited to be able to record the audiobook version of F the Fairy Tale too.
Oh, cool.
Which is actually doing very well.
I could see, I love all my clients have like ADHD and do audiobooks.
I'm an audiobook person as well.
Yeah.
I
Same.
read a lot more with my ears than I do with my eyes these days.
Mm-hmm.
But I did actually write. A lot of people were like, "Did you have a ghostwriter?" Whatever. I'm like, "No, like I'm a writer. I can't." This is
Yeah. Yeah.
I read and I wrote and read every word of this book, and there's just so much of all of the the 17 years that I've been coaching, and there are stories of clients, there are questions I've gotten on the podcast or questions from my
Mm-hmm.
LA Times column that I just really wanted to infuse people with hope. So it's a
Yeah. And
labor of
I
love.
do want, yeah. So if you're listening, check it out. If you're a single person or, polyamorous or whatever, check it out. I think it's a different perspective. Like when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is different. This is not what like all the other coaches are saying. So I think if you're just ready for like a refresh on dating, which I think all the single people that I know are, then you should check it out.
Thank you. And I've even heard from people in relationships that it's helpful. My mother-in-law said
How
it is now
interesting.
required reading from my father-in-law. So, I
What?
mean, that's kind of the best endorsement you could possibly get.
Oh yeah, it's but just when a family member even like consumes any content you've created, you're like, "Oh wow, thank you." Because usually they know us so well that they're like, "Okay, I don't need any more
I
of that."
know. I know. I live it every day.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being here. This was really fun conversation. Yeah, we'll make sure to include links in the show notes so people can find you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.